Gospel legend Kirk Franklin, who is renowned worldwide for his stirring songs and unwavering faith, passed out in the middle of church at the age of 55. As his daughter, Carrington Franklin, hurried to speak up and beg for prayers from the fans. Shock shook the assembly. What actually took place within those walls, and why is his family currently requesting so much privacy? You'll be shocked by what we're about to discover, so stay with me. And it's more deeper than everybody initially thought. In gospel music, Kirk Franklin is more than simply another name. He is a generation's lifeblood. His impact extends well beyond the church pews, as seen by his chart-topping tunes and his strong position as a Christian community leader. Therefore, there were instant shockwaves when word leaked out that he had abruptly passed out during a service at the age of just 55. In today's video, we are delving deeply into the events that transpired in that church, the statements from his family, and the hidden struggles Kirk Franklin may have been facing behind the spotlight. What happened to Kirk Franklin? Is his health more serious than anyone imagined? Why did his daughter Carrington Franklin feel the need to break her silence and call for prayers? Stay tuned, because by the end of this video, you'll see why the story is much more complex than a fainting spell. We'll look at his history of health scares, the demands of gospel fame, the emotional responses he's receiving from fans and fellow artists, and above all, what this moment means for his future, his ministry, and his legacy. It was supposed to be a typical Sunday service, the kind of day Kirk Franklin has experienced hundreds of times before. And the church was brimming with music, joy, and that energy that only gospel worship can bring. The most shocking part is that the details his family hasn't publicly shared yet could forever alter your perception of Kirk Franklin. Kirk Franklin, who has never been one to sit back quietly during service, whether behind a piano, standing at the pulpit, or encouraging the crowd to praise louder, was in his element as the choir sang and the congregation applauded. However, something went wrong on this particular day. According to witnesses, Kirk looked unusually exhausted. His voice was powerful and his smile remained, but there was a heaviness about him, as if his body were resisting him. Even as his spirit tried to push through, Kirk collapsed in a moment that no one could have predicted, and the sanctuary was filled with gasps. This was not a stage show or a staged dramatic gesture, it was frighteningly real. The music stopped, and some people said it felt like time itself froze. The congregation rushed toward him, and leaders promptly called for medical help. People prayed aloud in desperation, others started crying, and some people in the crowd were seen holding their phones, not sure whether to record the shocking scene or to bow their heads in prayer. Within minutes, Kirk was surrounded by church and family leaders, and his daughter Carrington, who has supported her father through disagreements and triumphs for years, appeared visibly shaken. This time, however, was different, and Carrington realized right away that this was something that couldn't be concealed or dismissed. Her decision to speak out so quickly speaks volumes for a family that has been under public scrutiny for decades. Later, she took to social media and asked for one thing: prayers. She didn't post a detailed medical explanation or share too much about what happened after the collapse, instead choosing words that showed both her fear and her faith. This is where the story becomes even more interesting, because Kirk Franklin had previously displayed signs that his health might be in jeopardy. And when we look back at his recent years, a troubling pattern starts to emerge. In order to comprehend the gravity of Kirk Franklin's abrupt collapse, we must look beyond that one Sunday morning. Kirk Franklin is 55 years old, and although his energy on stage makes him seem ageless, age eventually catches up to everyone. Touring, recording, ministering, mentoring young artists, and being a father and husband are just a few of the subtle clues and hints that have been present for years, suggesting that Kirk's body and mind may have been carrying far more than fans realized. When you combine the constant schedule that these obligations create with the tremendous pressure of being a public figure in the gospel world, where perfection is expected at all times, you start to see the bigger picture. Over the years, Kirk has acknowledged struggles that go far beyond physical exhaustion. Many people only see the polished artist in front of a stadium crowd, but few think about the toll those inner battles can take on the body. He has openly discussed his struggles with depression, insecurities, and the emotional scars from a difficult childhood. After all, stress is one of the most dangerous and silent triggers for health problems, including cardiovascular issues, burnout, and fainting spells. While no official medical report has indicated that Kirk Franklin was dealing with a chronic illness, fans recall that he looked noticeably thinner in interviews not long ago, leading some to speculate that he was overworking himself. The rumors intensified after he acknowledged making drastic lifestyle changes. People close to Kirk, including other gospel musicians, have frequently remarked on his work ethic, which raises even more concerns. Kirk may have been pushing himself well beyond his physical limits between music projects, family issues, and the constant demands of being the face of gospel music. Doctors frequently warn that persistent overwork and lack of rest can result in fainting episodes, heart strain, or worse. They describe him as something who never stops moving, who refuses to slow down, and who pushes himself to outdo every performance, every album, and every appearance. Looking back, it almost seems like this moment inside the church was building for years. The signs were there: weight loss, exhaustion, constant commitments, emotional burdens, but no one anticipated it to play out so dramatically in front of a whole congregation. However, this begs the question of why Carrington, his daughter, felt the need to publicly call for prayer so quickly. If this had been a case of dehydration or a simple fainting spell, wouldn't the family have reassured fans right away? Instead, Carrington's words carried a tone of seriousness and urgency that raises the possibility that the situation may have been more complex than the public believes. As we look into Carrington's choice to come forward, we find a more complex narrative that relates not only to Kirk's health but also to the stresses and personal hardships that the Franklin family has faced. Official representatives were remarkably silent when Kirk Franklin collapsed, and fans typically expect publicists, managers, or church leaders to make a statement right away. However, his daughter Carrington Franklin was the first member of the family to speak up, and her words had a weight that set the tone for how the public viewed the incident. Carrington posted a simple, urgent, and intensely emotional message asking for prayers online. She didn't sugarcoat it. She didn't try to make it seem like something lighthearted. She didn't share pictures of her father smiling in recovery, and she didn't promise that everything was okay. Her father needed prayers, and the situation was so serious that she wanted everyone to join her in praying for him. This may appear to be a normal request from a worried daughter, but if we go past the obvious, we find something more. According to Carrington, there may have been a period of uncertainty during which the family was unaware of what was going on or the full extent of Kirk's illness. Not to mention that Carrington's relationship with her father has always been one of quiet loyalty, even during times when the Franklin family was going through internal turmoil. Many remember the public fallout between Kirk Franklin and his estranged son, Carrington. That kind of uncertainty is terrifying, especially when it involves a loved one as central and beloved as Kirk Franklin. Her recent decision is all the more significant given the history of the tension, which was extensively covered by recordings, interviews, and accusations that surfaced online. Carrington stayed mostly out of the mess during that storm, but her silence was a form of loyalty in and of itself. She chose to stand by her father rather than add fuel to the fire. Carrington's decision to speak out so publicly, for someone who typically defends the family's privacy, demonstrates how serious this moment was. She knew fans would eventually learn about it, but by speaking out directly, she took charge of the story before rumors could get out of hand. She framed it as a call to prayer rather than as gossip or scandal. But here's the real question. Why not just say something simple like, "My father is fine," instead of praying, "He simply passed out"? Carrington's request for prayers presented the matter as more than just a medical matter, inviting the public to view it as spiritual conflict, a struggle for her father's health and welfare that needed divine intervention. In the gospel community, prayer is not just tradition, it is power. Black churches have relied on prayer for generations in times of crisis, illness, and uncertainty. Carrington's request that the community pray for Kirk tapped into that cultural foundation by reminding everyone that, despite his notoriety, her father is still a man in need of grace, healing, and support. That word choice speaks volumes about how the family may interpret what happened. Another reason for this was that when Carrington requested prayers, the conversation instantly shifted from speculation to solidarity. And rather than stimulating gossip blogs with wild theories, she steered the conversation toward faith. Of course, this hasn't stopped people from asking questions, and if anything, it made them wonder how serious Kirk Franklin's condition is. But because Kirk Franklin has always lived in a strange balance between public transparency and private battles, he has never fully disclosed his struggles with addiction, family issues, and self-image. Was this just exhaustion? Or is there an underlying health crisis that the family hasn't yet disclosed? This brings us to a pivotal moment in the story. The church collapse and Carrington's public reaction may be one of those events that makes the private public. However, before drawing any conclusions, we must consider another crucial component: Kirk Franklin's history of controversy, his resilience, and the way his family has always supported him in his most trying times. Because Kirk Franklin's story has never been one of easy success, we must take a step back and consider the wider picture in order to fully understand the weight of his collapse. And once you see how frequently he has overcome adversity in the past, you may realize that this moment could be both a warning and a turning point in his legacy. Kirk Franklin has been referred to as the maverick of gospel because, starting in the 1990s, he redefined what gospel music could sound like by bringing hip-hop beats, modern rhythms, and a raw authenticity into the church world. His journey has always been characterized by tension, controversy, and resilience, and those battles have left scars, both public and personal. However, this ongoing struggle between tradition and modernity, acceptance and rejection, became a part of his life story. While fans applauded him for making gospel music accessible to a younger generation, traditional church leaders accused him of diluting the sacred with the secular. Kirk has never held back from sharing his struggles with a pornography addiction, which shocked the gospel community when he first came forward. Many people at the time couldn't believe that a man who stood on stages preaching through music could have such a hidden addiction. However, the personal struggles behind the music were just as intense. Then came the extremely painful and public feud with his eldest son, Carrington Franklin, which wasn't just a family dispute. It blew into the public eye when Carrington leaked an audio recording of an argument with his father. Despite this, Kirk leaned into transparency in an attempt to find healing and redemption. It was a devastating moment for Kirk, who had to publicly apologize while still struggling privately with a broken relationship with his son. Fans, who had always viewed Kirk as a shining example of Christian composure, were shocked to hear his voice lashing out angrily and cursing in the clip. The internet erupted, with some accusing him of hypocrisy and others defending him as a human being under pressure. These controversies reveal an important truth: Kirk Franklin is not just a gospel icon, but a man who has lived his life in the tension between his faith and his flaws. Carrington and the rest of the family found the experience exhausting, and they were abruptly thrust into the public eye with strangers analyzing their personal suffering. And each time he had to deal with scandal, health issues, or public criticism, he somehow managed to get back on his feet. However, getting back on your feet comes at a price. The emotional and physical toll of constant criticism, demanding schedules, and family strife can be something that the public rarely notices. Now consider this. It's not just a fainting spell when a man like Kirk, who has battled addiction, been publicly humiliated, experienced family conflict, and served in ministry non-stop, collapses in church at the age of 55. It's a sign that his body and spirit may be at their breaking point, which is why Carrington's call for prayers feels so eerie. Her call for prayers now implies that this collapse may be one of the most serious moments her father has ever experienced. But Kirk Franklin's story has always been about more than pain. She has seen firsthand what her father has carried, and she has seen him repeatedly recover. But she has also seen the price of that resilience. As we'll see in the next section, the gospel community, fans, and fellow artists are already reacting in ways that demonstrate just how deeply Kirk Franklin's life and legacy matter. It has also been about redemption, which begs the potent question, could this very collapse, as terrifying as it is, be the turning point that compels him to slow down, heal, and reshape his life going forward? The gospel community, known for its close-knit bonds and shared sense of spiritual family, rallied in ways we haven't seen in years when word spread that Kirk Franklin had collapsed in church. Their responses may provide clues about what comes next for him and whether this collapse will be remembered as a crisis or as the beginning of a new chapter. Prominent gospel singers, pastors, and even secular celebrities swiftly chimed in, posting heartfelt prayers asking God to strengthen Kirk and restore him. Hashtags like Pray for Kirk and Stand with Franklin started trending, demonstrating just how deeply this moment shook both fans and fellow artists. Social media timelines were flooded with prayers, Bible verses, and emotional tributes. A prominent gospel artist referred to Kirk as the glue that holds modern gospel together, saying, "A man whose influence reaches far beyond what most people realize." Other people shared personal stories of how Kirk had influenced their lives, not just through his music, but also through his mentorship and presence in the industry. Fans started asking hard questions such as, was this collapse due to exhaustion? Was there an undisclosed illness at play? Why was the family being so evasive in their statements? Some pointed to Kirk Franklin's noticeable weight fluctuations in recent years, while others pointed to his constant schedule of public appearances and performances. Kirk Franklin is more than just an artist, he's an institution. Online rumors abound about everything from heart issues to stress-induced burnout. And although none of these claims were verified, the ambiguity only stoked interest. Kirk's silence only served to heighten the speculation, as he typically responds quickly to fans directly through interviews, social media posts, or unplanned live streams. There was nothing this time, though no video, no comforting smile, no direct words from the man himself, and the silence became deafening. In the world of celebrity news, silence frequently leads to more questions than answers. But one thing was certain. The overwhelming amount of support demonstrated how much Kirk Franklin is adored. Songs like Stomp, Imagine Me, and I Smile became more than just songs. They became lifelines for people navigating pain, depression, and their own struggles. For thousands of fans, Kirk Franklin was more than just an entertainer, he was a healer, a spiritual guide, and a reminder that faith can endure even in the most trying times. And maybe that's why the reaction to his collapse wasn't just about celebrity rumors. It was personal, with fans feeling as though a member of their own family had been killed. The prayers weren't merely kind words, they were urgent, desperate pleas from people who feel that the ministry of Kirk Franklin's music is partly responsible for their survival. However, some critics couldn't help but notice the irony. Kirk has spent decades urging people to persevere, smile, and trust God in the face of adversity. Now, in this vulnerable moment, he found himself on the receiving end of the same message he had poured into others. The man who encouraged millions to smile, despite the pain, now needed those same words spoken back over his own.